In this episode, it's just me, myself, and I as I talk about a group of hikers who set off on a hike of a lifetime that ended with only one of them surviving the trip. And what she says she witnessed happen to her fellow hikers raised more questions that to this day no one can answer, and they say it's comparable to the Dyatlov Pass tragedy. Enjoy. I'm just a girl in front of a mic asking people to watch weird shit with me. Welcome to... Wait, what are you watching? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wait, What Are You Watching? A paranormal comedy podcast where I ask friends, coworkers, celebrities, strangers to watch a weird documentary with me and then come back on the show to talk about it. I'm your host, Elaine, and today I'm also the guest. Yeah, it's just you and me. Are you scared? Are you creeped out? Probably because I have this voice right now. I don't even know where that came from. If this is your first time tuning in, come on in and join our lovely crew of misfits, also known as my regular listeners. You probably ran into them in the grocery store or at work, and they look pretty normal on the outside, but then they turn around and tune into podcasts like this. So don't judge. Because technically, if you're listening to this, you're all part of this now. Anyways, please excuse the sound quality as I am recording this from Studio Yaris, aka my car. I could have just used an old episode and had a Friday replay, which would have been just as good. But I'm dedicated to giving you guys new episodes, even if there is no guest. Also, I'm using this as an excuse to actively avoid working out. All right, first, let me go ahead and see the results of our probe. It's the probe. Ow! Oh no, it's just questions. It has nothing to do with your butt. Stop bending over. You're making it weird. I can already feel the new listeners immediately tense up. They didn't sign up for the probe, but don't worry. It's just paranormal related questions. I ask my listeners, you answer, and I blab it out on the show. And then give my own 2 cents because I can't help myself, okay? So this week's probe question was, have you ever seen the Hat Man? So if you've never heard of the Hat Man is allegedly a spooky, shadowy figure often described as wearing a dark coat and a hat, hence the Hat Man. Hello. The Hat Man is reported to appear in bedrooms when people are falling asleep or first waking up. He kind of ties in hand for most people for like kind of one of the symptoms that you get with sleep paralysis. So a lot of, doctors and what have you who deal with people who have sleep paralysis, they say, oh, that's just a thing that you see, but like everybody around the world sees a hat. Like, why a man in a hat? Why specifically? I had a guest, Melissa, who was on here, and she has seen a Hat Man, but the hat was like a kicky beret or something. Still, what is that? Why is it part of the sleep paralysis thing? It's very, very odd. But anyways, I put that question on, but thankfully none of the listeners who are on Instagram had seen a Hat Man. Phew. However, I did get a direct message from the Rewatch podcast, and they told us that their roommate had seen one, and they both saw shadow people in their rental for years. His roommate saw a guy with a hat walk out of his closets, across his bedroom, and out the door. Here's my question. How do people go back to sleep after that? Like, how do you forget that? Like, you told me that story, and I'm afraid to go to sleep in my bedroom. So, some people are just braver than me. And I got 2 emails from listeners who want to remain anonymous, talk about their experience with the Hat Man. So the first email I got, they said, I've seen the figure a lot from when I was a child. It would be standing over me. It looked fuzzy and faded, which is crazy because that's what my guest Melissa said too, that it looked like static. Other times it would be in the corner of the room. I would sometimes think it was a dream, but I know I was awake. One time I purposely looked at the time and pinched myself, and he or it was still there. I turned on my side, facing the wall, hoping he would go away, and when I turned back around, he was gone. I know for a fact I was not suffering from sleep paralysis. Interesting. Another email I received said, when I was 4 to 5 years old, one of my earliest memories actually was I woke up on the floor of my grandma's living room next to my sleeping mom. From where I was laying, I could see the front door, which had a window at its very top. The window was at 8 inches, like I said, at the top of the door. I think that's what they meant with 8 with a comma. Numbers, stop throwing it at me. Type it out. So I'm going to say the window was 8 inches. It can't be 8 feet. Okay, I'll shut up. The window was 8 inches, like I said, at the top of the door. I could see a shadowy figure of a man in a fedora looking in at me. I pulled the covers over my head, scared out of my wits. I'm 43 now, and it's still one of my most vivid memories. Again, as I'm reading this, I'm picturing it, and that would absolutely terrify me. It just triggered literally a memory. Wasn't a hat man, but I do remember in my childhood home, my room had a window that, like, basically if you looked out of it, you just saw like the little alleyway on the right side of my house. And then you could look to the right, and that would lead to the backyard, and then look to the left, that would lead to the front yard. I remember vividly that I woke up and there was somebody staring at me from that window. And it's not like it was an enclosed property. They would have had to jump the fence. And I remember seeing that, and I think I fell back asleep, which I guess I just answered my own question. I wasn't scared though, because like I thought I was dreaming. And what if I wasn't? Ugh, that is just so freaking terrifying. And I'm sitting alone in my car in the dark, but it's in a really busy parking lot. So I am a chicken shit. So I have never witnessed a hat man, but I guess apparently I did witness somebody looking at me, through me at the window. If you have witnessed a hat man or have seen something that you question that maybe you were asleep, please write in to wait.what@gmail.com. I would love to read your stories on the show. I'm not completely sad that I have not seen the Hat Man though, but I do wonder about all of it. It would be one thing if like one person saw it, but the fact that it's the same like silhouette with the hat. What is that? Are we like experiments? Oh my gosh.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the episode. Your listens and ratings really help with the success of the podcast, but another way you can help and get some perks on the way is through my Ko-Fi page. You can now support the show through monthly donations for as little as $1, with perks like shoutouts on social media, access to exclusive content, ad-free episodes, and more. And if you pick the top tier of $20, you pretty much own the show. Help me reach my short-term goal of visiting the most haunted houses in the US, and my long-term goal of being the Filipino Samantha Brown of the paranormal. Link is in the show notes or my social media pages, or simply go to ko-fi, ko-fi.com/wait what podcast. Enjoy the show.
Anyways, all right. So let's get to this documentary I watched on YouTube. Now, what caught my eye immediately was the title, of course, right? Because that's what they do on YouTube. It was named Worse Than the Dyatlov Pass. So I've done a show on the Dyatlov Pass like a few seasons ago. I think it was still on Wait What? But basically the Dyatlov Pass is this group of hikers that, like, they were all expert hikers, but it was just weird because they were found, dead around their camp. They had, instead of getting out of the tent, they'd slice through it. Anyways, it's a whole deal. There's a couple of like theories that came out, but it's still kind of very strange. There's nobody that like has a theory that everybody agreed on. That's a whole other deal, and I'm sure you've already heard of it. But this one I've never heard of. So the description on YouTube reads, the story of the Korovina hiking group is not unlike that of the infamous Dyatlov Pass incident. What exactly happened remains a mystery to this day, surrounded by eerie rumors. And to make the story even more chilling, it has been recounted by the group's only survivor in cold-blooded detail. So what really happened that day in the mountains of South Siberia? And this time, what's even more intriguing is that with the Dyatlov Pass, no one from the hiking group survived. But with this group, there was one remaining hiker who did survive. So I'm like in. Like, why is this worse than the Dyatlov Pass? What actually happened? I mean, they have a survivor, so why is it still a mystery if there was a survivor who was there? So, like, so many questions added to the spiral down into the rabbit hole of the Korovina group incident. That's like the official name. The Korovina group incident, which is, I get why they changed the title. It's not very exciting, right? Like, incident sounds like it's like office drama. Anyways, this is definitely not that. Okay, so this starts out like with a woman named Ludmila Korovina. I'm going to butcher these names, so I've made my peace with it. You should make your peace with it too. Ludmila Korovina. She's 41 years old. She's an expert, like, survivalist, and she teaches hiking. She's a hiking instructor and very well respected. Like, a lot of people knew her, her colleagues and her students kind of just knew her as this master of being a survivalist. Very tough on her students. And she pushed them to the limit. Like, sometimes they would make the hiking trail. They would go on a hiking adventure with her, but these students would make it, and it'd be a wonderful experience, but their parents would be like, the next day they were just done, like, exhausted to the point of like, poke, are you okay? But they still trusted her. And again, everyone regarded her as master in hiking and great teacher. So you see where this is going, right? You see that this is a very experienced person. And yeah, this is what makes it strange. So in 1993, she planned to hike the Kamara Deban mountain range with 6 of her students. She knew the area, it was a popular tourist spot, and overall a hiking destination that, like, everybody knew was going to be safe. People have done it before, especially Ludmila. But, like, when they were talking about how long this hike was, so basically when I was watching the documentary, it like gave you like kind of a 3D map, and it would zoom to where they would start, and it zoomed to all these different places that they were stopping. Yo, this is 140 miles. So this is a couple days of hiking. Like, why? That's insane to me, even if it's well known. I will never not shut up about going to Half Dome and not making it. But that to me was a day. And since I was not trained, and on the way down, basically lost both of my toenails because it was just, my shoe just didn't have any give. And that was, for me, in total, I think it was like 13 hours. So it was only take like 11 hours to get that done, but it ended up being 13 to 14 hours because I was just not prepared for it. Even if if I was prepared for it, it took 11 hours, or even 8 hours of hiking. Like, ugh. And then you wake up and you do it again. Oy vey. Anyways, so good on them. I could never. 140 miles. The 6 students she took were 23-year-old Alexander, Sasha for short, Alexander Krissen, and his nickname was Sasha. He was 23 years old. Then there was Timur Bapanov. He was 15. And Victoria Zalesova, 16. Valentina Yutachenko, she's Valia for short, she's 17. Tatiana Filipenko, 24. And Denis Zvachkin, 19. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with how I tried to make that sound as authentic as possible. But that was the 6 students that she took. So this group of young, and don't forget, experienced hikers, because they were taught by the master, they set out to hike starting at this Murino village, August 2nd, 1993. So this, I was about to say, so this was recent, which is not recent. Somebody put a meme up that said that Back to the Future would be like going back to the 90s if you did it today, which is like, fuck all y'all. I was a junior in high school, so I know it was a long time ago. But anyways, August 2nd, 1993, the weather was great. They had clear skies. They were excited to get started. And Ludmila's daughter, Natalia, was also leading a hiking group near the region. So the plan was that they were going to cross paths on August 5th. Now, the first 2 days of hiking were smooth. They climbed Retransliator Summit. Retransliator Summit. All right. And they did it pretty quickly. So on August 4th, the group made it there and they started to descend. And the weather was supposed to be clear. However, it was not. Not even close. Essentially, the group ran into a lot of rain. And they were cold, of course. They were wet. And it was getting harder to hike because now their supplies were damp. So they had to slow down considerably. Now, Ludmila made the decision to set up camp in an open area because she saw that like her group was exhausted. And they couldn't start a fire. It was super wet. But they made it through the next morning. So the next morning, they built a campfire, they had breakfast, and they continued hiking. So, crisis averted. And they remembered, oh yeah, we have to meet up with Natalia's group. They summited the first mountain so fast that they thought that they would be very surprised. They would probably be first before Natalia. So back to Natalia, when Natalia's group reached the designated meeting spot, they weren't there. Ludmila and her students were nowhere to be found. Insert ominous music here, right? Natalia, though, said she wasn't worried and thought maybe her mom had just gotten caught with the bad weather and decided to stay one more day. So they decided to stay one more day. But when they didn't show up the next day, they just continued hiking and were like, oh well, they're going to do what they're going to do. So that's how much confidence she had in her mom. Again, known trail. Lots of people take this all the time, so not a big deal. Fast forward to August 10th. A group of kayakers were going down the river at the base of Kamar Daban Mountains, and they noticed a girl just standing alone near the trees, staring at them. So, of course, this is a surprise because there's nobody around. It's kind of like a very isolated area. I don't think where they were paddling had a hiking trail. So they paddled up to the girl, and when they got closer, they noticed that she was covered in dried blood. So they reported when they approached her that she was wide-eyed and dazed. And so almost kind of like she was in shock. Before she broke down in tears and she tried to tell them what happened to her, she told the kayakers who she was and who she had been with. The kayakers eventually took Valentina Utuchenko, that was the girl, Valya, to the police station to file a report. And it took several days for her to tell the story of what happened because she was so much in shock that she wouldn't talk, that she was very morose. And even then, when she told the story, it was confusing. And it kind of raised more questions than answers. So this is Valya's account, okay? The only surviving member of this group. She claims that after the group had breakfast, they started to go down the mountain. And when all of a sudden, one of the hikers, Sacha, started screaming. So, yeah, of course, they all turn around and they look at him, and he's foaming at the mouth and bleeding from his eyes and ears. Ugh, what? Yeah. And he fell to the ground and he was convulsing, and then he was still. So this hike went from 0 to 100 really freaking fast. So Ludmila went to try to help him, and she told the other hikers to keep going down the hill so they could get some help. But it wasn't long because Ludmila, I guess she was trying to revive Sacha, she started to experience the same thing. But there's like conflicting stories. So when Valya got interviewed, she said that they didn't get far because when they started to walk down, Ludmila began calling for them to come back. So according to Valya, she went to Korovina and she looked at Sasha's eyes and they were huge and indifferent, quote unquote. Korovina took his pulse and his heart had stopped. So at this point, Korovina said, you know what? Go down and help Vika down. And so when Valya went up to Vika, because I guess Vika had come up there, Vika bit her. Okay. And then when they got back to, when they looked back at Ludmila, she was screaming. She was bleeding from her eyes and her nose and foaming at the mouth and also convulsing. So Tatiana was the first one to get to Ludmila, and then she started having the same symptoms. And then she started grabbing at her throat like she couldn't breathe. And then she ran over to a rock and banged her head against the rock again and again until she lost consciousness. Like, what in the actual fuck is going on? So it starts with Sasha and it just like spirals. Everybody starts having these crazy symptoms. And Dennis ran behind a rock, and Timu and Victoria ran away. Now, Valya just said she stood there because she was stunned. She had just seen 3 of her friends die in like a few minutes. And then she tried to check on Korovina, but she was now non-responsive and not breathing. Another count said that this is the time that she saw that she was bleeding from her eyes. Anyways, Victoria and Timu, remember they ran away, but they collapsed. And Valya said they were tearing at their clothes and coughing up blood and grabbing their throats. Ugh. Like, this is a nightmare, okay? And this is happening during the day. I mean, it doesn't matter, like, night or day would be a nightmare. But it's just such a contrast from, like, they were going hiking. They just got done having breakfast. And all of a sudden, it's just like, this happens. So Valya ran, and Dennis did too, but Dennis collapsed shortly afterwards. Valya ran, and she only had her clothes and one tent. She ran down the mountain, and she tried to get some distance between whatever the heck it was killing off her friends. She just kind of set up camp under a tree and like went into her sleeping bag and fell asleep. And again, I know I was asking questions like, how could you fall asleep? But at this point, like, I see this is just, she's disassociating. This is clearly like she's traumatized. She's just gonna like, I don't blame her for just, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep. And then Valya spent 4 days following power lines down the mountain, hoping for a rescue. And that's when she found the river and followed it. And then, of course, she finally saw the kayakers on the 4th day. So they decided to go on an official search. Now, even though Valya filed a report for the police, they didn't really start searching for the bodies until August 24th. They didn't give a reason why. But I think that one of the reasons was Valya had not been able to provide like a full account of the events, because I think it took her a couple days to kind of just like, remember and spit it all out. And the helicopter took 2 days to locate the bodies. And when they did an autopsy, all the hikers, aside from Ludmila, who allegedly suffered from a heart attack, died from hypothermia. They were found with bruised lungs, and they said that the death was due to a protein deficiency resulting from starvation and extreme hypothermia. So they concluded that their deaths were accidental. Actually, the head of the Bureau of Forensic Medicine said, "We received 6 hikers' body for autopsy. Our task was to determine their cause of death. Could it have been hypothermia? Could they have been poisoned? Are there any injuries on the bodies? Firstly, we carefully studied the conditions under which this tragedy occurred in order to determine what could have killed the trekkers. The whole thing happened high in the mountains with low temperature and heavy rain. And plus, the hikers were exerting themselves physically and were deprived of oxygen. In such conditions, death can occur quickly. There have been cases when, under similar circumstances, people died of hypothermia within 2 hours. The autopsy revealed signs of hypothermia, such as lack of nutrients in the muscles, which is why the diagnosis was given. Furthermore, experts found pulmonary edema and changes in the heart, liver, and lungs that were typical of dysautonosis. I don't know how to say that. Dysautonosis, which can be a sign of starvation. But here's kind of the big hole in that. I would just say hole in the plot. But here's where that theory doesn't fit, because they would not be starving, because according to Valya, they all carried 2,400 calories worth of daily food for each person. So they had, like, nuts, berries, vegetables, lots of protein crackers. And when the rescuers found the bodies, there were food in their backpacks. And Valya had said they had just eaten breakfast as they descended the mountain. So it couldn't be from starvation. Now, when they start researching this, and this is so typical, of course, the police and them, they start to pinpoint Ludmila, right? And they were saying, well, maybe she pushed him too hard. Maybe she was too proud to turn around and got lost, etc., etc. But the family was like, there's just no freaking way. Because, again, an expert hiker, she's done this before, and they completely trusted her expertise. Like, even though she's exhausted her students, they knew that she was going to do what was best for the students, like not try to put them at risk. Now, I know, like, weather happens, but, again, just hypothermia and starvation doesn't explain what Valya recalled, right? So there was really something kind of suspicious about the whole thing. Plus, there's now all these stories about how the government kind of interfered. So there was these theories, because a lot of hikers who hiked that particular trail that the group did, they said there would always be this fog that didn't feel like fog. They said it was sticky. It was sticky fog. And that was described by hikers in the area. So they were thinking that possibly there was some kind of, like, I don't know, like chemical that was there that was maybe being tested in the area by the government. And it's kind of like, when you think about one of the teammates biting her and banging their head, that could be from like a chemical, like, if they inhaled something poisonous. Natalia, who's Ludmila's daughter, admitted that she was actually paid to be quiet. This was, I think, like 20 years afterwards. They went on like a talk show to talk about this incident. Valya was there, and so was Natalia. Valentina, or Valya, didn't talk about the story again for 20 years. She talked about it, like, obviously she gave the account to the police, but she never talked to anybody until after that 20 years, and she went on to that show. And then Natalia said on the talk show that she was paid hush money, and that she was taken to the office and was asked not to ask questions about the incident or investigate the deaths. They offered her a lot of money to do it, and she just took it. And then she also wasn't allowed to see her mother's body or be present to identify the body. Now, she thought it was just because she was young, it was her mother, they were like saving her from, seeing this. But then later, the family said that they were also not allowed to see her body. And the hiking group, were buried in closed caskets. So none of the relatives had seen the mother's body either. I could only assume the other families had not seen their bodies either. So it seemed like there was kind of like a cover-up maybe going on. But the official story is it was hypothermia. Now, there are several theories, of course, right? So, there was the whole gas chemical thing. Now, a lot of people say it was naturally occurring gas. They say that that area suffers from 800 earthquakes reported annually. And the travelers say with all these earthquakes, it causes cracks through the ground, and you see all these natural gases escaping from the cracks. And they said that maybe that's what's the sticky fog, and maybe they breathe that in. But Natalia, the daughter, thinks it's a man-made gas that's being released there. So that's one of the theories. And a lot of the researchers who look into it say that the symptoms reported by Valya are the symptoms you would find if you were dying from chemical weapons or nerve agents. You would convulse, you would foam at the mouth. Another thing was lung bruising. So this is a sign of death by nerve gas. And all the hikers had bruised lungs, or all the hikers that had passed had bruised lungs. And they said nerve agents can also trigger a cardiac arrest, which is the cause of death for Ludmila. And of course, when they would, they went through the autopsy, of course, hypothermia would have been the eventual cause of death. And they say because they could have fallen unconscious or fallen into a coma due to the nerve toxin. And of course, they would be exposed. And of course, they would die of hypothermia. But that doesn't mean that's what caused them to die, if that makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it is eventually what they died of, but it's obviously not what led to, there's something else led to their death. So they were also thinking that they could have ingested poisonous substances through the water. So there's, I guess, a toxic waste disposal in Lake Baikal, and that's situated above the mountains. So they think that maybe if they drank the water, this poisonous stuff from the toxic water got into whatever water source that they were coming from. But again, Ludmila is an expert. Those students were learning from Ludmila, so I would assume they're not amateur hikers either, especially if she's picking them to go hiking 140 miles. She's not going to pick an amateur. So they would have known this at the very least, that if they were going to get water from a river, they're going to boil it. I mean, I don't even go hiking a lot, if at all. And even I know if I'm stuck somewhere and I need water, you're going to want to boil that because you don't want to drink anything, regardless if it's toxic. You don't want to drink anything that might be in the water, that could give you the shits or whatever. They also said the hikers' meals could have been laced with chemicals, because if the waste carried downstream into the water, toxic chemicals could have fallen from the heavy rain that they experienced. And Valya could have survived by consuming less water. But here's the thing, why hasn't it happened before that and after that? If they are thinking that, so was it like just a freak of nature? Like just kind of a freaky thing that happened that particular day during the rain, that all this toxic stuff came in. And why, I mean, I guess they can't test the water after a couple days, but it's just weird to me that it just happened on this one day and that it never happened again. If this was a popular trail, you can't tell me that it hasn't rained there. If people haven't experienced this after heavy rain, why this particular day? I mean, am I saying it couldn't happen? No. But it seems a little far-fetched. I don't know. You guys tell me if I'm just ready to believe the conspiracy theory. But it just seems like there's all these things that are not adding up. Okay? Especially, again, with the whole water thing about drinking water that could have been poisonous. They, I think, would have boiled it. Unless the toxic chemicals were so toxic that even boiling it wouldn't get rid of it. I mean, who knows? Again, more questions than answers. And then, of course, there's the theory that they ate mushrooms and that Valya didn't suffer from all this because she didn't eat the mushrooms. Now, Ludmila was a skilled forager because, again, expert survivalist. But maybe she or another one of the hikers mistakenly picked a toxic mushroom for breakfast. See, that's like amateur hour, right? Like, not to eat mushrooms, or to be very careful of mushrooms that you pick out. And again, with experts like Ludmila and also the hikers, I'm saying that they would have known, I think, not to eat the mushroom. Plus, they had tons of food. Why would they be foraging for mushrooms? Unless they wanted to like trip out. But they had to meet that other group. I can't imagine that they would be tripping out first thing after breakfast. There's another theory that the group did collect rose root. The rescuer, one of the rescuers, his name is Rudy, said that when he met Valentina Yudichenko, according to her, before that night, the group was gathering and drying rose root. Rhodiola rosea is that is the official name. Probably not how I said it. Rhodiola rosea is known for its amazing properties. Apparently, this root can increase stamina, build the body's resistance to stress, help with fatigue, and they happened to find a lot of rose root in Korovina's backpack. And then they said that, like, oh, maybe she was gathering it because she intended to sell it once she got back to the city. Now they're just pulling shit, like, right out of their butt. What? I'm sorry? So she went this whole time to gather rose root. So after she got back from the hike, she could sell it like a drug dealer. But it's just so typical. They're like so ready to trash this woman, who I'm sure tried the best and had a great reputation. And she's dead. She can't like defend herself. So they found rose root in her pocket. They're like, oh, she's clearly selling it. But then there's another theory that, like, since they were gathering a lot of rose root, that they were punished by forest spirits who apparently will punish you if you take too much or have foul intentions. The tradition was like the spirits in the mountains will punish anyone who gathers rose root in excess. I mean, okay. I mean, I trust the stories, but also, like, do I think that that's what made them go crazy? That's going to be the last one. As much as I would love to believe, well, not love to believe, but as much as I, tend to love the paranormal stories, I feel like the other theories have a little bit more merit than just, they gathered too much rose root and this was nature punishing them. But what do I know, right? What I'm gathering from this particular story and from Dyatlov Pass is, you know what, guys? Day hikes in public areas. Day hikes, 20 minutes. I mean, what is the appeal of a 140-mile hike through the mountains? I guess at the end, to say that you did it, I mean, I don't know. I let people enjoy their things. It's not always my thing, but good on you to be passionate. But 140-mile hike? And, like, even a small road trip that's 140 miles, like, you're already like, okay, I need a break. I need a Slim Jim, right? I mean, seems like things will happen like this because nature is a motherfucker. That's just me. I'm not a hiker. And also, I find nothing appealing about a 140-mile hike. I just feel like at that point, I'm like, no, I'm ready to go home. I need a shower. I need room service. That's my kind of hike. And my issue with this whole thing is they seem to be ignoring a lot of Valya's recollection of the incident. Valya said it was, they were bleeding from their eyes. Oh, but it's hypothermia. So, like, I feel like they're just ignoring Valya's recollection. So what do you think was the cause of the Kamar Daban incident? I have questions about the incident, questions about theory. This documentary, or this YouTube mini documentary, really kind of just opened up a whole other slew of questions. But it's a very good, fairly short, made for YouTube documentary. The YouTube account is from Archie's Archive. Link is in the description, of course. You guys watch it. Let me know what you think, what theory resonates with you. I also got a lot of my information from paranormalcatalog.net. And so they go into the Kamar Daban incident and more theories, but basically it's the same thing. So here are the theories. The first theory was that the sticky fog was something chemical. And so that chemical basically caused them to go nutso, because it was like a nerve gas of some sort, even though some people say it was natural gases coming out, which explains like the sticky fog. So we got that right. Then we have the theory of toxic waste from a toxic waste disposal in Lake Baikal somehow got into the water that the group was drinking. And that's what made them go crazy. And maybe that also some of it got into the river, and then all the heavy rains, it got into the rain, it soaked into their food or backpack, and maybe that's what caused it. Okay. And then, of course, the third theory is the herbs. Like, one, it was they ate too many mushrooms, and two, they gathered too much of that rose root and was punished by nature. It's all, I mean, who can say? My theory, honestly, is I think it was some kind of like a chemical gas, natural or government gas. Who knows? Maybe they stumbled upon like a testing area and the government didn't want to take responsibility for it. The reason I go with that is because what explains the payoff to Natalia? Why did they not let the families see the bodies? Right? And yeah, I think that for me feels like the most plausible. I just don't like, yeah, I guess it could be natural, but I just don't buy the theory of hypothermia and starvation because they still had food in their backpacks. They just ate breakfast. And again, feels like they're ignoring Valya's recollection when they came up with the hypothermia theory. And I think that's because they just want to like close the door on it, which adds to the suspicious, the theory that this was somehow kind of a government cover up. Again, you guys let me know what you think. Comment on my socials. So, class, what did we learn from today's episode? So, all together now, get a hotel, order room service. I mean, you want to go on a hike, go for a hike for like 20 minutes and then go get some ice cream. Like, seriously. Or a nap. Why doesn't anyone plan a nap during a vacation? Like, do you know how amazing it is to like take a nap on vacation, wake up from the nap, and still have the rest of your day to fart around? It is fantastic. Highly recommend it. In fact, I used to go to Palm Springs with my friend Brandy, and we would do nothing. And Palm Springs really lends itself to do nothing. There's not a whole lot to do there. We would wake up whenever we wanted. We'd watch a little TV. We want to go get breakfast? Okay. Walk to get some breakfast. That was delicious. You want to go back and sit by the pool? Sure. Sit by the pool, get a little tan, take a nap and take a shower and take a nap in the hotel and blast the air conditioner. Hell yeah. Afterwards, we would go get ice cream. Like, psh, I mean, it was the absolute best. I recommend that way more than hiking. I mean, and walking from shop to shop technically is hiking, right? But of course, you don't run into natural gases and or bears and or anything weird that's happening in the forest, that happens all the time. And that's not just me being a chicken shit, that it does happen all the time because there's literally a podcast called Park Predators where the whole podcast is shit happening in the state parks. So just don't do it. Now, the fact that I'm going to Half Dome in September also shouldn't encourage you to do it. I'm doing that because I have a problem. I have a problem in that I have a Napoleon complex, and just picturing my little self on top of a Half Dome gives me a thrill. And maybe I can kind of understand why people would go do this hiking thing. But do I recommend it for you? Hell no. I want you to be alive, safe, well fed, in a well air conditioned place. And I want you to come back here every Friday and listen to my podcast. I want the best for you. Anyways, thank you for joining me in Studio Yars today as I go on this like caffeine induced, and I'm drinking caffeine very late at night, this caffeine induced rant by myself in the car. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple. You could see before the show highlights, bonus footage, blog posts that other people can't see on ko-fi.com. ko-fi.com/wait what podcast. You can subscribe for as little as $1 a month. And this is for a limited time only. So get on there, sign up for a membership. My goal with Ko-Fi is to become the paranormal Samantha Brown. Your monthly donation will not only get you all those behind the scenes perks, but it will help me on my goal to visit the most haunted houses in America. The first one being the Whaley House in San Diego. I cannot believe I lived in San Diego for 15 years and I've never went to the Whaley House. And here I am in San Luis Obispo, and all I want to do is go back there and check out the Whaley House. So if you become a member on Ko-Fi, you could help me accomplish that goal. That is the perks that I just mentioned was just the dollar perks. There are more perks the higher you go. Okay, so go check that out. Again, thanks for listening, folks. It was just you and me today. You were wonderful company. You're such great listeners. You absolutely didn't mind that you could not get a word in edgewise. And for that, I thank you. Thanks for listening. I will see you again next Friday. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wait, What Are You Watching? This podcast was produced, edited, researched, and hosted by me, Elaine Cheney. I would really appreciate it if you could help me continue to create and grow by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next week.